If I may welcome you all without any further ado. Ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, speakers, and participants, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for some others over the other side of the globe. I believe it is 7:30 in Washington, D.C. now. So thanks for our speakers and panelists and participants from that side who are early morning with us. And while it is 12:30 Greenwich Mean Time, it is also 3:30 in Bahrain, 3:30 afternoon. But I do understand that it is 10 o'clock, 10:30, and even 12 o'clock in some other parts of the world. And I know that some of you, although it is almost midnight, but they are following up with us. So thank you very much. And welcome for this second international SMEs, for the second international seminar of the UNISMO, the United International SMEs Organization. This is a follow-up of the first seminar, which we had last month or the month before, and that was for the East Globe region, while this one is for the West Globe region, and that's all due to the time difference. In this, I think the first one was a success, a very big success, thanks to the panelists, speakers, and all participants. And I'm sure that this second seminar would also be a successful one with the panelists and speakers that we have on board. We're tackling a very important subject, which is the reopening of the global markets and the opportunities for the SMEs in its West Globe edition. And this is coming at a very crucial time where the whole world now witnessing this and combating, in fact, this global pandemic, the first ever of its kind worldwide. Nevertheless, the whole world is combating it and facing it fiercely and with a lot of passion, especially that this time and this month, or last month, we started also facing the second wave. Nevertheless, the whole world, with its leaders, they are determined to face this pandemic and beat it. And yesterday, I think we heard some good news coming up to a vaccine, which is like 90 or over 90% successful for relief. And that's by the Pfizer, both the Pfizer company and the BioNTech company. Anyway, without further ado, because we believe that the UNISMO is looking after the SMEs worldwide, thanks to its board members and to its chairman, His Excellency Mr. Abdinabi Al-Sha'la, that the UNISMO is to take the initiative of ringing the bell and making sure that the entrepreneurs, the SMEs owners, the business owners in general, and the businesswomen as well, they are on the front line as the medical doctors as well, facing this pandemic and coming up with solutions and standing side by side with all the government efforts, with all the leaders of the governments, with all the leaders of the international organizations. And today we are lucky that we have our panelists and distinguished speakers who also include the UN resident coordinator in Bahrain and the UNDP resident representative, Mr. Stefano Bettinato, as well as all other distinguished speakers. Now, without any further ado, because I don't want to take much of your time, and I'm sure that you are all eager to listen to the advices and beautiful ideas like last time from our distinguished speakers. And without any further ado, I'd like to start with a welcome and opening speech from His Excellency, Mr. Abdinabi Al-Sha'la, the chairman of the UNISMO. So, Your Excellency, welcome. Without any further ado, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdul Hassan. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are, good time, anywhere you are, distinguished speakers, panelists, and audience, fellow members of UNISMO, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the founders of UNISMO and on my own behalf, it gives me great pleasure to greet and welcome you all for the second event organized by UNISMO. In the first seminar, which was held on 29 September 2020 this year, as the East Globe edition, we were optimistic concerning the reopening of the market. We were indeed very optimistic. However, until a few days ago, we were rather doubtful of our optimism since we saw the advance of the second wave of coronavirus and more of a human sufferings and casualties and lockdowns. Our optimism was revived only recently with the announcement, only yesterday, with the announcement of the success achieved by Pfizer and BioNTech in developing a vaccine against COVID-19 with more than 90% effect. This development, with the demonstration of a strong commitment of President-elect Joe Biden to put the fight against the virus on the top of his agenda. He has already taken, and we have seen, he has already taken concrete measures even before taking office, which is due on January 20th next year. Well, as we all know, the formation of UNISMO was undertaken by a number of senior executives and experts in the fields of entrepreneurship and SMEs, representing the 6 continents of the world. It came in response to the need to create an international platform to achieve many vital objectives, of which I will cite only 2 of them here. The first is to contribute to the development of an enabling environment for the small and medium enterprises sector around the world. And the second is to work to convey the voice and aspirations of entrepreneurs and owners of small and medium enterprises to the country leaders and decision makers around the world through official channels represented by various international organizations of the UN, of the United Nations, and other specialized organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject and the theme of this seminar cannot be more relevant and timely. The global economy continues to take a huge hit from the coronavirus pandemic since the beginning of this year. Let us pray that the worst will be soon over and a quick recovery is on the way from the worst global downturn since the 1930s. While observing social distancing measures and while remaining cautious and fearful of another wave of the pandemic and corresponding lockdown, global economies gradually are being reopened for business in many parts of the world after long and painful shutdowns. Though we are probably still a long way from returning to complete normalcy, we are encouraged by record levels of fiscal stimulus, as the global fiscal support now exceeded $10 trillion, in addition to sustained low interest rates and ongoing low inflation. All of these factors create a positive environment for a quick recovery and for economies to start emerging from the lockdown. Furthermore, the news of vaccine development is promising, as I mentioned earlier. It goes without saying, however, that additional policy support can lead to a quicker resumption of economic activities. Once more, I would like to reiterate in this seminar also that no real and substantial economic recovery can be achieved without giving utmost priority to the SME sector. Without the survival and the growth of SMEs, the health of the world economy cannot be regained. SMEs, as we all know, represent 95% of all companies in the world. This is where the majority of people in the world work. This is where ideas and energy are generated. SMEs are the lifeblood of world's economy. Supporting their sustainability, strength, and resilience is an important policy component of employment, social cohesion, and more inclusive growth. We have to continue repeating and asserting this message to the world decision makers that this is an important issue we are addressing. After we defeat the pandemic, and to ensure SMEs' contribution to the growth of national, regional, and world economy, we have to continue and even focus more on addressing the three major challenges confronted by them, by the SMEs, mainly access to finance, lack of enterprise, or rather a lack of expertise, and barriers to cross-border trade. It is vitally important for the speedy world economic recovery to have fully functioning support measures, support mechanisms for SMEs on national, regional, and international levels. Like the rest of the world, the SME sector in the countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, was the most affected with the pandemic devastation. SMEs represent more than 98% of the total number of companies operating in this region, contributing in some GCC countries towards 52% of the non-oil GDP. Entire sectors such as hospitality, food and beverage, entertainment, tourism and travel will have to be at least reshaped, if not totally reinvented. These sectors constitute an important base of the economy of this region and have to experience new realities. Hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, your debates today will show them the way to maintain their resilience and to go forward from local and regional to global markets. May I thank you once again for your participation in this event and wish you every success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this enlightening opening speech and highlighting the importance of the SMEs globally, which make 98% or even more of the global markets and the global economy as the lifeblood, as you mentioned. A lot of ideas, which I think there are lots of questions as well from the audience, which we will leave till the end of this session. And by the way, our first session will have 2 more speakers, after which we will break for 15 minutes for question and answer before going to the next session, second session, with another 3 speakers, and then another question and answer session before we come to the end and conclusion of this very important seminar, international seminar today. So thank you very much, Your Excellency. And our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Stefano Bettinato, who is the UNDP resident representative and the UN resident coordinator in action at the Kingdom of Bahrain office. And without any further ado, Mr. Stefano, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay.
We do.
Yes, very well.
This is the usual question always asked in the hundreds of Zoom meetings that we're all participating in. I want to thank and acknowledge and appreciate also the words by Chairman Abdul Nabi Shawala. Thank you very much. I want to say hello, good morning, afternoon to all the excellencies and everybody, all the distinguished colleagues and participants that are with us virtually today. It is really a pleasure for me to be here today representing UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme Office in Bahrain. And I want to thank UNISMO, of course, and for the organization, the SME Society, Dr. Abdul Hassan, with whom we always work so well together. Thank you so much for engaging me today, Astronar and all the organizers of the event. But it truly is an honor, I have to say, to share virtually this podium somehow with colleagues of organizations that I greatly respect, really. I mean, of course, UNISMO, but also OECD and the WIN network. I really look forward to hearing from our colleague from that network. It's such an important area of work, and all the successful entrepreneurs that are with us today, and all the participants, of course, to this event at these not so late hours, but later hours. For some, these are after work hours, so this is also extremely appreciated. I will try to be as brief as possible. It's such a rich topic. It's such a relevant topic, and it is overlooked sometimes, hopefully less in more recent times, because there's evidence of the importance of the SMEs. And I would say the MSMEs in a lot of countries today, given all countries are affected in different levels, but by the pandemic. So, I mean, stepping back a little bit, we know that the SMEs account for an overwhelming majority of the economic activity from private sector businesses. This happens throughout in developing countries and developed countries. I mean, I look at it broadly because UNDP itself, we work in over 160 countries globally, and we engage a lot with SMEs, with small and medium enterprises. And so here in Bahrain, of course, it's no exception. And given the role of the micro, small, medium enterprise in the global economy, we need to acknowledge and we need to recognize, and we should never overlook the importance of these market operators in contributing to development, to sustainable development, and yes, to the sustainable development goals themselves, you know, as just as a framework of reference, if you will. Formal small medium enterprises and micro small and medium enterprises, they contribute to 45% of total employment and up to 1/3 of GDP in emerging market economies. Those numbers are huge. And it's in those emerging markets that we have 1 out of 10 new positions in the formal sector, new jobs in the formal sections that are created by MSMEs. 1 out of 10. And this is equivalent to approximately 90% of total employment. The creation of and looking forward, looking in projection, the supply of new job opportunities for the future, the world population keeps increasing. So the supply of these new jobs will be addressed mostly by SMEs, as the demand for jobs will emerge, and of new jobs that today don't even exist. As we know, there will be many jobs that today we don't even know very much about, but that will be created, and they likely are that the driving force for the supply of these new jobs is going to be small and medium enterprises. And they're essential specifically for the achievement. I mean, we still have these goalposts of 2030, the SDGs, and the economic related SDGs, which are, I'm assuming that everybody more or less understands what I'm talking about on the 17 goals that all countries committed to globally. It's not necessarily the UN SDGs, this is where they were agreed on, but they belong to each one of us. You know, the SDGs are a responsibility and a right, but also a duty for their commitment to everyone, really, and everybody can do their part. And so among these SDGs, where I see the huge traction from MSMEs is, of course, sustainable economic growth, absolutely, but also increasing employment opportunities and decent work and livelihoods, especially for those who are most disadvantaged. Now, Bahrain has a special situation because Bahrain doesn't necessarily have a pool of population under the poverty line, but it still applies because, of course, there are some individuals in Bahrain that are have less opportunities than others. So SMEs really provide a gateway to the labor market for many as entrepreneurs, but also as employees of these small and medium enterprise. But also let's talk about the innovation. I mean, today we are faced with a challenge, multifaceted challenge that is not only a health challenge, we know that very well. I mean, I'm not going to repeat things what we hear a lot, but also, so what to do? Can a large, huge corporation adapt as quickly as a small 10, 20, 30 people entity? No, clearly there is an advantage in terms of innovation and finding quickly solutions, turning around problems into opportunities in the ecosystem for that is really the smaller entities that can really contribute then to a better quality of life, education, improved health to their society by providing these employment opportunities. So now more than ever, this is a reality. And then I want to also mention that the issue of social entrepreneurship, it's kind of a buzzword that is talked about a lot. What does it mean? It means, of course, those enterprises that in their vision and in their product and in their internal processes, they embody a social content, some kind of a social mission that goes beyond the bottom line itself or the sale of their product or their service, but they also want to make a contribution. And this is actually today more important than ever because chances are, I'll venture into this, this hypothesis that today, more than ever, people are aware of the fragility of the planet. People are aware of the fragility of us as a human species, and we need to do more to help each other. We need to do more to help our planet, help our oceans to appreciate when we open a faucet and water comes out, or to be able to distinguish and separate organic waste from other waste, and to be demanding about that. So SMEs are also facing a market that is becoming more and more demanding. They demand from the entrepreneurs and from whatever product or service that they're buying, they increasingly demand something that also has an impact on the planet and on society, has a positive impact on society. So this leads us to the millennials that, it's according to several perception surveys, they see in this new generation of young people that inhabit our planet, a lot of demands, not only for a product that is good and that it's what we wanted, but also a product that has this social element. So what this takes us to is, hopefully this will be discussed too, is the fact that there are going to be increasing requirements that are put on the to-do list of an entrepreneur, including reporting on this impact, right? The ESG requirements that some are familiar with, the economic, social, and governance content of what your enterprise does. The fact that you need to have internal practices that are equitable, that are inclusive, that are open to persons with disability, other minorities, you name it. I mean, and also that there's a transparency element in the company, but also that there are economic and social impacts that are positive towards the outside too. So all of this is kind of appearing and surfacing more than ever, arguably. This is just going to be my argument for the sake of signaling the importance of this. But so we know that also, and I'm almost finished with these comments. We also know that these requirements are very heavy on a small enterprise. I mean, we can't compare Microsoft or closer to Bahrain, GPIC or Alba on the resources that they would have to develop these kind of reporting mechanisms on their ESG and their SDG mainstreaming, etc. So MSMEs need some support. They need to be helped. They need to be harvested in a way, a new generation of SMSEs. The government has a big responsibility in supporting small, medium enterprises that are sustainable, that are resilient, and that are inclusive and that are successful. Of course, at the end of the day, we want them to be successful. Singapore, one country that often comes in mind, and for Bahrain, it's an interesting comparator, Singapore. More than 100,000 SMEs, 70% of the SMEs in Singapore use business support programs organized by government enterprise development agencies. Well, in Bahrain, we have similar things. I mean, we have operations like Tamkeen, of course, is a key partner in this, and other entities that provide some support, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, the EDB, the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and others. But probably there is need for some more. And also we have incubators and accelerators in Bahrain, CH5, C9, and many others that also accompany the small and medium enterprises in these early phases. And from the United Nations, we have UNIDO, which is a sister agency of UNDP that works a lot with enterprise. So all of this is sort of trying to close the picture on recommendation on trying to report on these new requirements that the market will ask for, internal and external standards, and that will appeal to this new customer base, whether it's on Bahrain. Bahrain has the challenge of having a very small market, so it may be looking into other markets that are even perhaps more sophisticated as a customer base and therefore demanding these requirements. I want to finalize by saying that we are working with many entities here. Bahrain, UNDP is working with Dirasat and many others to try to assess the impact of the pandemic in Bahrain. It's a socioeconomic impact assessment. It's not on the health side. WHO is taking care of that, the Ministry of Health, but it's more on the socioeconomic front. So we carried out a survey on the impact of the pandemic on the private sector. We have preliminary results from the survey where we interviewed companies and managers and entrepreneurs, most of them of the sector, SME sector. So what came out of it? 59% reported a decrease in monthly revenues of up to 50%, while 30% reported a revenue decrease of more than 50%. So 1/3 of the companies interviewed report over 50% revenue decrease. None of the companies saw an increase of those interviewed. This is not representative for the whole ecosystem here, but it's a good chunk and it's significant. 62% of companies had to reduce their workforce by 50%. Companies acknowledge technology-based solutions. This is one of the way outs, right? That small companies may be able, with that flexibility, to find digital or technology-based solutions to increase efficiency and to increase resilience for future shocks perhaps. And so we hope to be able to help these companies to find those solutions and to share them when they found them. So I will finalize, sorry, this was a bit scattered perhaps. I just tried to cover as much ground as possible. I want to echo the remarks by Chairman Al-Shuala. I want to congratulate the organizers of the event. I really look forward to the proceeds, ideas, tips, nudges that may come out in the discussion and the questions, of course, and answers. And I'm sure that we can all learn from each other and really join forces. This is a time, I also liked Biden's speech and Kamala Harris. They all talk about coming back together, really. This is for the United States, okay, president-elect, but I think that as a planet, we really have to come together. We have to share what we know, have a more cohesive ecosystem based on solidarity and transparency and healthy competition, of course, because we're talking about the market, because this is really a new normal, and that we want to build forward better as opposed to back, build forward. This is what my administrator always says, UNDP head, to build forward better, to be more prepared, more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient. And SMEs have clearly a huge, huge role to play. So look forward to the discussion, and thank you so very much to the organizers and to my fellow panelists. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Stefano. This is lovely and very important, I would say, speech. It's like a paper where you shared with us lots of ideas and points, talking about the importance of the SMEs and the new jobs after the pandemic, mostly digital, the 17 UN SDGs, the goals of the UN, the lifelong learning, life and planet, social elements, the ESG, and then ending up with the joint survey with Dirasat, which is the Research and Studies Institute in Bahrain for the strategic studies in Bahrain. And one of the main findings that 1/3 said that more than 50% of the companies had a reduction in their revenue and so on. Anyway, I think there's a lot to talk about during the question and answer. But so thank you very much, Mr. Stefano. And now we are really also glad today to have with us Ms. Christine Engvig, who is the founder and CEO of the Women International Network. And I like the nickname of the network, which is WIN, W-I-N. It stands for the name, but it's also, it gives a very positive meaning of win. And I think it is all win-win. Based in Switzerland, but of course, as I understand, have a global appearance and members from all over the world. And of course, when we talk about the Women International Network, we're talking about the role of women. I think I believe they make not only half of the population, but maybe even more. So it's very important, the women and the business women arena, you know, and to talk about the role of the women in general, the business women, the women entrepreneurs, to help fighting and you know, facing and combating the COVID-19, and then leading the way, coming up with, you know, new opportunities and finding new opportunities, paving the way for the business owners, for the entrepreneurs, and all the key players to find their way. So without any further ado, please help me to welcome Ms. Christine Engvig. Dear Christine, the stage is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan, and thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, fellow speakers and guests. It's a great honor to be here and in Bahrain with all of you. It's amazing. And Dr. Hassan put it so well. It's about a time where we want to create win-win. It's not about winning over, but it's about winning together. And whether it's together with nature and together with the people of so many different countries, this is our time now to really focus. And you're exemplifying this also by inviting me here today. And I see people are coming from many different places. So this is already making change in the moment. Now, I represent an organization of women mostly, and even if we are joined by an increasing number of courageous men, it's about women, and I think it's an interesting time also that we focus on that, because there has been, we have lived in a time where, particularly in business, it's been mostly done by men, and you see so many women are so good at it, or women have done it behind the scenes or here and there, but more and more it's happening. And there is about 250, 260 million women entrepreneurs around the planet. And when you've seen also now in this pandemic situation, many of the women-run businesses are small and medium-sized businesses. So that's been a challenge. And I know many of our members too have been having challenges, but also innovative. And I think this is why it's so important with small and medium-sized businesses, because it's where we can create the well-being of our society, of our ecosystem, of our structure, of livelihood. And I think particularly for women or parents, we can say, to have the flexibility that sometimes small and medium-sized businesses also represent has been very, very important. Because when you run your own business, you can also a little bit establish the new rules. And I think that's why this is also extremely important. So what is also happening when women are not part of business? The World Bank was saying that countries around the world are losing as much as $160 trillion just because the women are not giving access to the business world or a workplace in the first place. And originally I come from Norway, and there was a big article in Financial Times a while ago that said it's not the oil that's the most important contributor to the GDP, it's actually the women, and that there are high representation of women in the workplace, paying also taxes to the country and being part of creating products and services. So this is obviously something that's very, very important, and to be done in a win-win way. Now, one of the things that we do in our organization is also to encourage inclusion. So an inclusion of people from different countries, different nationalities, different genders. So it's not about segregation, but bringing people together. And we know that when we have inclusive businesses, there's some really, really good reasons to do that. Not only do we become more creative and innovative, but it also sees that when we have inclusive businesses where people feel really they can relax and be themselves and be who they want to be, we are 2 times more likely to meet business objective when it comes to performance, and 6 times more likely to meet innovative and agility goals, and 8 times more likely to drive better business outcome. And these are research that come from Deloitte, the consulting company. And likewise, also we see that when we have women and men or more inclusive businesses, let's say, they're 17% more likely to report that they're high performing. And also employees of businesses that are more inclusive, there's an improvement of absenteeism. So 10% improvement of people actually want to go to work. So you have, when you feel included, you have less people feeling sick, and they're actually coming to work to really do a very good job. We also know that in many countries, women account for the total buying power. And so there's a lot of reasons why we want to have a focus on this as we build up our society and make sure we have more creative ways of doing business. So in the WIN organization, we have a way, because we put together so many women of so many different countries. And I think, as we have heard from other speakers here, this is the time also to build up and to reach out with solidarity and help each other. And I know many of our members have also had to fight, or they've had to take a stand, let's say, and be pioneers and walking paths that were previously not walked by them. So one of the rules of the game, or why we stay together, which I think is applicable to everybody, is that we are trying to be as open as possible to reach out and help each other. And I think this is the case for SMEs now. Continue to be open, reach out, meet with people you don't know, meet with people that think differently than you, and with lots of respect, and catch yourself judging, because this is the time to build bridges. And how can we do that? We do that by finding common purpose. All of us in this room are maybe running small entrepreneurships, or if we are not doing it ourselves, we are in contact with those. So we have always something to talk about, something to share. And I think to be entrepreneurial, whether you're in a big organization or a small one, this spirit of being alive, of contributing and wanting to see change, that is such a vital spirit for the world today. So I think we can just do everything we can to keep SMEs growing and taking more risk, because that's also what we want to do. We need to create safe environments where people can take risk, because SMEs are those taking the risk. Often the big companies come in later, but the small ones are those taking the risk, and whether that's run by women or run by men, it doesn't matter, but we want to have stimulating environments, and then we want to commit. So I think that the case of the business women around the world is one of very positive. It's happening and women are mobilizing and so on. And we know it's not about doing that alone. It's about working together, creating win-win solutions. And the American election was just mentioned, and I think we see there too that Harris and Biden, they seem to want to do this as a team. And I think this is something we see in many, many places. We all need each other. We need nature. We need different generations and different varieties. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your time, and I hope to come and see you live at some point in not too long, and we can fly more again. And meanwhile, here's to win-win. Here's to speaking up for those that are in more difficult situations and support each other. And I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christine, for this enlightening speech. And lots of ideas and points thrown over here. And I think the role of women and the business women and entrepreneurs is, I think, vital and very important. And I think very important point that you mentioned. I think they are making the biggest portion of the buying powers worldwide. Yeah. So without women, I believe there are no markets. So we're talking about the reopening of the global markets. The role of the women as buyers is also very important. So I think they shape the market as well. Then talking about the common benefits and the change leading, etc. Anyway, I leave all of this now for the next session, which is the question and answer. And we have 15 minutes for question and answer, because we don't want this to be like a one-way communication, rather than two-way communication or multi-way communication. So right from now till 4:30 Bahrain time, I'm talking about Bahrain time, allowed 15 minutes for the question and answer for the panelists, and including His Excellency Al-Shala as well. So I think we already have questions from the audience. So let me read this for you. The first question from His Excellency Mr. Rida Faraj, who is a member of the Shura Council in Bahrain. He says the most pressing requirement post-COVID-19 pandemic to help SMEs would be a very focused program to address the following areas: funding the SMEs to overcome their suffering from the pandemic, mentoring them, providing management, and looking for markets so they could sell their products. What help could be provided to the SMEs in the above-mentioned core areas? As I said, from His Excellency Mr. Rida Faraj, member of the Shura Council, Kingdom of Bahrain. So, Your Excellency, dear panelists, Mr. Stefano, and I think also Ms. Christine, your answer probably, or discussion for this point, and then we go for the other points as well.
Yeah, allow me, as I said earlier, I'm sorry, briefly, only to say that, as I said earlier, we have to continue. And given the circumstances now, to even focus more on providing as much support as possible to SMEs. The decision makers in all over the world should realize that fact. And I think Stefano was also highlighted the fact that so much of challenge will be now confronted by the SMEs in observing and creating more job opportunities, as they are expected to be much more flexible and able to cope with the challenges than huge corporation who have laid off many millions of employees to the market. So I think you are right. I mean, the question is timely and correct that this should be raised and directed towards authorities concerned with this. No progress, no reopening of market, and no global growth of economy without adequate support. It was there from the beginning. This is an important factor. It's proven to be even more decisive and more vital now.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Yes, I think Stefano had something to say as well.
Thank you. Yes, as a very good follow-up. I hope a useful follow-up from what Excellency Shola just said. Essentially, I mean, the way I see it is, I'm not qualified really to give advice to SMEs. Otherwise, I would be much richer and in another profession. I won't aspire to that. But what I can say is that I think that we have to look at the immediate needs of SMEs and the more long-term perspective and support to SMEs. At the immediate level, it is about survival. At the immediate level, it is about caring for the ones that had pre-existing conditions, perhaps just like patients, right? Patients of COVID-19 with pre-existing conditions are likely to get sicker and more. Well, SMEs or any enterprise that had a very low margin of savings, of reserves, or had a system that was not ready to respond to shocks. Imagine a small training institution. We have a lot of those here in Bahrain, and they have suffered a lot. These training institutions that were dependent on in-presence students who would come, and they cannot do their trainings anymore. And these are private sector entities. So the ones that had a system in place for virtual training, they were kind of anticipating maybe the need for being more resourceful, you know, and so they have now used those platforms to stay afloat and to maintain their customer base. So in the short term, it's the ones that have these quote unquote pre-existing conditions that need immediate support. Because many of them are really going bankrupt and they're failing, and the first thing that happens is that employees are unfortunately fired because they're losing their demand base, and then the company is closing down. The second consideration, which is a longer term consideration, is on long-term investment to prepare and to build the resilience of the companies. And in that process, it is exactly what Christine was saying, which is not only to just be ready for a next pandemic and so let's do ABC. It is to shift, to take advantage today of shifting the mind frame and really starting to see a holistic, a much more broad and inclusive concept of a company, of an enterprise. And so, yes, I need to change, so I will change in the direction of employing certain types of employees that can enrich the diversity within my company, my enterprise. I can start, you know, having a product that has not only a bottom line that is advantage for me, but also a product or a service that has a content that can be can contribute to other objectives in society, and not just the sale of X. And also to sell it in a way that maintains sustainability and has a low carbon footprint, or a positive carbon footprint even. You know, we like Christine has the luck to live in a country where there's so many examples of these companies that are really at the edge globally on good practices in terms of environmental sustainability and so forth. So that's very, very useful for countries like other countries in the world. So I would just like to suggest that in the interventions from government authorities and others to support SMEs, we differentiate between a rescue package, which is what is happening in Bahrain a lot to Bahraini health, from a longer term set of interventions that help for the preparedness, resilience, and sustainability of the companies to build forward better, as I was saying earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. Christine?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, on the one hand, when we have a great chance, as long as one is just surviving, to reinvent, to create new things in a more conscious way. I also want to mention one more thing, and that's about the power of everybody, the consumers, actually, each and every one of us. When we make also a decision to buy something, to be more aware when we're buying, you know, is there an online bookstore that is a local entrepreneur? Do we need to go to a big Amazon of this world or something? So if we are more conscious also in this period, who are we actually buying from? This is a way we can also support small and medium-sized enterprises. So I think just talking about that, where we are with friends and with contacts to build such awareness, I think that's an important point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And I think we have two more questions. In fact, one from or three, in fact. I can't find the second one from Ja'far Hamza, but I can see now Ibrahim Zainal question, COVID, saying that COVID-19 definitely will have a serious negative impact on SMEs. Of course, by the way, Mr. Ibrahim Zainal, His Excellency Ibrahim Zainal, he was the Deputy Chairman of the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce. So, Abu Rashad, welcome and great to have you on board. So his question is about serious negative impact on SMEs. Maybe some will be wiped off. He says that governments here have been supporting in a big way with financial funds, but what can international organizations like UNDP or other organizations provide and help? Mr. Ibrahim Zainal from Bahrain. I think, Stefano, this question is for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we have to identify the mandates of organizations and see if a direct support role fits. Unfortunately, it depends on the country, Excellency Zainal, because in some countries, UN organizations come with funds, with a lot of funds that are channeled through DANICA, through the Spanish Corporation, through the UK DFID, etc. And these funds help to support specific sectors of society, including small and medium enterprises. In Bahrain, the situation is very different. The UN in Bahrain doesn't come with an envelope of resources, but rather works with national authorities for the efficiency in the use of those resources and to build capacity. So what UNDP can do, and also UNIDO, as I mentioned earlier, and other organizations, is to work, and we do that already. We work with companies, even of the private sector, and or academic institutions also. For instance, the University of Bahrain is a huge partner of UNDP in this case. And we try to see what the opportunities are to incorporate these elements into their business model. So we're not talking about a corporate social responsibility. We're not talking about a fund that is allocated to doing good to the world, or we're not talking about charity even. We're talking about a business model in a company, in an academic institution, even in an NGO, a model that incorporates sustainability, that incorporates, we can call them the SDGs, we can call them economic, social, and government principles, you name it. But this has to be part of their business model. It has to be part of their everyday doing. So the United Nations, also with the UN Global Compact and other similar initiatives, what we do is we sit and we try to find ways for these principles to be mainstreamed. Now, in terms of the immediate rescue, Excellency Zainal, that is a responsibility of the government, unfortunately. And that is also, unfortunately, it's a market situation that is almost cannot be prevented, that some companies will fail, will stop existing. And it's very painful, and it will affect human lives and livelihoods and families and children. But this is a matter of fact. And so as much safety net can exist from government entities or civil society organizations that can support this or re-employ, that would be extremely useful. For the longer term solutions is where the UN and UNDP organizations can come into play, along with many other actors, of course. But thank you for the question. It's very inspirational to see that we are considered having a role in this field.
Thank you, Stefano. Here, the other question I just found it at the chat from our member, Mr. Ja'far Hamza, and it's also to the UNDP. So probably since you're talking, you have the mic. And he asked about the accelerators and how can we, this is his question, how can we optimize use of the accelerators, incubators, and UNDP in COVID-19 time? And how can we accelerate the innovation with these entities in Bahrain? Quick answer, please, so that we can, yes, I think, spare more time for the other questions. We have lots of questions. By the way, you can raise your hand and we can give you the mic to ask a question, although the time is very limited. Yes, Stefano, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I did mention the accelerators and the incubators in my initial remarks. I think that in Bahrain, they're very active. They're very strategic, and they do really terrific work in times of, I mean, Bahrain in the past years has been undergoing a set of difficulties, at least from the economic point, for the financial point of view and the fiscal point of view in particular. But at least the economy was growing before COVID-19, and so these incubators take advantage of the positive energies and the opportunities that emerge in a growing economy. Now, when the economy is shrinking and when the demand buys less, and when people go less to restaurants, when there's less tourism, less travel, less infrastructure, this is very complicated also for incubators and accelerators, they accelerate ideas and innovation and positive energy from entrepreneurs. But when there is less market, it's a different role. It's a role of training, perhaps retraining. Many people who have an enterprise, they realize that they have to go digital. They have to sell the products that they sold before down the street here. They have to, all of a sudden, they have to go through some kind of online portal. They have to learn Instagram, which in Bahrain is by far the biggest social network platform, much more than Twitter. And so there needs to be a possibility for somebody who's today maybe in their 60s or to learn these new skills. And I think that the incubators, if they have a little bit of support, we have a member of the Shura Council that made a great question, and we have a lot of leadership of Bahrain today with us. I hope that this can resonate, because also incubators and accelerators are, in a sense, as an SME of sorts. And so maybe we can help them to help others, to multiply their capacity of catalysts, of support, of retraining, of retooling existing SMEs to be able to survive and stay afloat until a better day will come. As we heard, Pfizer is developing a vaccine, is very close to that. Inshallah, hopefully 2021, second half is going to be a moment of recovery for everyone. And we will see some oxygen for all great entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Stefano. And this is another comment. In fact, we'll read for you 2 more comments before we go to the next and last question. This comment from Dr. Faisal Abdelgader, who is the former UN resident coordinator in Bahrain office. And he says that this rather a comment than a question on my distinguished colleague, Stefano. the UN resident coordinator on the SDGs and the challenges of COVID-19. While the current trends suggest that the process of implementing the SDGs might be delayed, the potentially and opportunity to address an SDG goal of poverty, for example, may be at least undermined. And the other comment from